my using, I don't remember a lot of it. And like, so now I can like look back and kind of see some things happening, but I don't have a lot of like great using stories because I was like literally just the bottom of a barrel, drunk and junkie from the get-go. I really didn't acquire anything to lose other than myself.
That was Kayla Greenhalge, and this is the SHAIR Podcast.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host, O.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the SHAIR Podcast. And today we have Kayla Greenhalge joining us on the show. She is a sober mommy. She is the founder of Sober Mommy blog on recovery and addiction. And she has also had articles featured on addictionblog.org and thefix.com. Kayla is part of the destigmatization of addiction movement. She's loud, she's proud, and she is determined to help others find their way to the other side the same way she did. So today, Kayla takes us through the battle she had with drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in her life, and her journey into recovery up until today. But first, we're going to start off this episode with a reading from Just for Today. January 22nd, 2017, The School of Recovery, page 22. This is a program for learning. Basic text, page 16. Learning in recovery is hard work. The things we most need to know are often the hardest to learn. We study recovery to prepare ourselves for the experiences life will give us. As we listen to others share in meetings, we take mental notes we can refer to later. To be prepared, we study our notes and literature between lessons. Just as students have the opportunity to apply their knowledge during tests, so do we have the opportunity to apply our recovery during times of crisis. As always, we have a choice in how we will approach life's challenges. We can dread and avoid them as threats to our serenity, or we can gratefully accept them as an opportunity for growth. By confirming the principles we've learned in recovery, life's challenges give us increased strength. Without such challenges, however, we could forget what we've learned and begin to stagnate. These are the opportunities that brought us to new spiritual awakenings. We will find that there is often a period of rest after each crisis, giving us time to get accustomed to our new skills. Once we've reflected on our experience, we are called on to share our knowledge with someone who is studying what we've just learned. In the School of Recovery, all of us are teachers as well as students. Just for today, I will be a student of recovery. I will welcome challenges, confident in what I've learned, and eager to share it with others. My name is Omar. I'm an addict. Another great reading, and as usual, it's exactly where I'm at in this moment today. This is the same Just for Today reading, January 22nd, 2017, that it was 2016, 2015, since I got clean. And yet every year they take on a different meaning, they take on a different form. This is still reminiscent to where I'm at right now, which was getting through 2016 and then springboarding into 2017, where I was faced with many challenges, many crises, and I had an opportunity to either dread and avoid them or look at them as opportunities for growth. At the end of the day, it all boils down to fear. And the acronyms that I learned in recovery for fear were face everything and recover, or fuck everything and run. And on a daily basis, I have to decide what I'm going to do with that fear. One of the greatest things I've learned in this program is that I only have a daily reprieve, 24 hours, just for today. So if I get up in the morning, I get on my knees, I ask God for help, I surrender, I turn my will and my life over to the care of God. And then the next morning I wake up and I don't do that, then I am now operating on self-will. And that's not just a topic in recovery, that's a topic in life. The top motivators out there, the leaders, the Tony Robbins, the Gary Vaynerchuks, the Hal Elrods, these inspirational motivators speak about these opportunities in life, these challenges that present themselves, and we have a decision to make and how we look at these, because it's all about your perspective. As a human being, and speaking for myself, it's so easy to, tuck my tail between my legs and run instead of doing the hard work, which is ask God for help. Because I know if I do that, I'll get the answers that I need. But sometimes these answers or these gifts they come in packages that I don't like. The wrapping sucks. So we get these gifts in wrapping that we don't like. So in many cases, again, speaking for myself, I don't even want to open it. And that's a big mistake. The sooner I tear open these gifts and start looking for the opportunities of growth and learning, the sooner miracles will happen in my life. It's as simple as that. Again, I go back to, I've been doing a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, and I mean on my knees prayer. God, help me intuitively understand how to handle situations that used to baffle me. I can't do this. You can. I'm going to turn this over to you. Those kind of prayers, where the minute I'm done with that prayer, I'm ready for the day. I have relinquished control. I've allowed the sunlight of the Spirit to work through me, to shine through me, and to allow God to guide me through the day, which is what I need. The school of recovery is really the school of life. Every challenge, every crisis is an opportunity to learn and grow. And years from now, when somebody comes to me and asks me the same question, I'm going to be able to walk them through them, only because I can tell them my story. So today I am grateful for this program. I'm grateful to be an addict, and I'm grateful to be in the school of recovery. More importantly, I welcome these challenges. I do. Because as I turn things over on a daily basis, I'm confident that my higher power is going to get me through it. If God got you to it, He'll get you through it. I believe that 100% with all my heart. So thanks for letting me share. HP, baby. And let's dive into Kayla's story. But first, if you have not yet rated and reviewed the SHAIR Podcast, please, one of the best ways to help support the show is to go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and a review, and that helps catapult us up the ratings on iTunes, which will make it easier for more and more people to find the SHAIR Podcast. Now, in the past, many of you have asked, how can I help support the show? Well, I'm going to keep it simple for you. First, I want to thank the people who have sent us donations via PayPal. There are a few of you that still continuously send donations on a monthly basis, but we can always use more. So on a weekly basis, I have over 5,000 listeners every week who listen to the SHAIR Podcast. So if 100 of you guys would send me $5 a month, that would completely support the show from beginning to end. So for those of you who have the wherewithal to send me $5 either PayPal or by Patreon, then please feel free to do so. We could really use the support. Also, when you're purchasing stuff on Amazon, there are those of you that are still clicking on the Amazon link on the SHAIR Podcast website before doing their purchases on Amazon. But again, there are thousands of you listening. If each and every one of you could just remember to go to the SHAIR website, click on the Amazon button before you do your shopping, that is also going to make a tremendous difference for us financially. So I haven't been one to emphasize it in the past, right? But now we've got a solid listener base. I know you guys love the show. I know you guys get a lot out of it. There are those of you, just like in the meetings, that are newcomers. The money's tight. Keep listening. The show will always be for free. The SHAIR Podcast private accountability group will always be for free. But for those of you who can, kick in a couple of bucks. Help us out here. And not to forget the SHAIR Podcast private accountability group. Again, it's growing like crazy. Guys, go to the SHAIR Podcast, www.theshairpodcast. Click on the button that says join the Facebook private group. For those of you that are in the private accountability group, you know how vital and important that has become. There's over 1,500 members in there. If you don't want to go to meetings, if you have problems connecting with people, if you need something more than just the podcasts and are not ready to cross over into meetings or some other structured program, then the private accountability group is perfect for you. Jump in there, make comments, ask questions, or just read the posts. There are so many people out there that have the same questions that you have. All you have to do is just read those and then read all the follow-up answers and responses that come. And make sure to subscribe to my weekly newsletter so you know every single time a brand new episode is launched. And of course, if you have any questions, just email me, at theshairpodcast.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. So now a quick message from our sponsors, and then on to the show. Sober Nation is the largest online recovery community and treatment resource center. They provide treatment resources to those struggling with addiction, as well as to the family members who are caught in the crossfire. On top of that, Sober Nation is a huge community of good people who share their experience with each other. They have informative content, recovery and addiction news, as well as an entire clothing line which helps expand the culture of recovery. They can easily be found at www.sobernation.com. Sober Nation is putting recovery on the map. Hey, Kayla, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to have you on the show today. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Awesome.
All right, so let's jump right in. So first, folks, today we have Kayla Greenhalge joining us on the SHAIR Podcast. And Kayla is the founder of Sober Mommy Blog on recovery and addiction. She has also had articles featured on addictionblog.org and thefix.com. Kayla is part of the destigmatization of addiction movement. That sound about right, Kayla?
Sounds good.
All right, excellent. So let's dive right in then. So first of all, just take us into your normal daily routine, including recovery.
Sure. So I'm a mother of two. So I wake up very early in the morning and, I do my normal morning routine. It's pretty hectic with two kids. I work from home. I went to school for engineering. Right now I'm working on emails. And so I work for 8 hours from home. I have a nanny here. After work, I usually take that time to either go for a run or if I'm in New England, so it's really cold out. So I'll either take that time to meditate or do some writing or reading or, whatever I need to do to transition from my workday into being a mother again. And then, I do the whole family thing at night. And before I go to bed, I meditate again. I reflect on my day. I write any wrongs that I need to write at that time, and then I hit the pillow.
Excellent. So what does your recovery routine look like as far as meetings and that kind of a deal?
So I talk to my sponsor every single day. Meetings are kind of when I can get to them. Like I said, I have a full-time job. I have my writing. I'm doing a lot of outreach projects in the addiction community. So a lot of my recovery is around going and meeting other recovering addicts and trying to, make open forums for the communities. It's a lot of community outreach with other addicts. And then, usually once or maybe twice a week, I'll get to a meeting, and sometimes I'll get to the whole thing, or, I at least try to show my face because they know that they can, if I need help, I can come to them. And then if they need help, they can come to me.
You're very, very busy.
I am.
You've got a lot going on.
I do. It's crazy, but that's how I function best.
Some of us just absolutely need to be on that grind, every single day.
Dead space it's troublesome having that dead space.
Absolutely. You did mention in the beginning about, you meditate in the morning and you meditate at night. One of my questions is, how do you maintain your spiritual condition, that conscious contact with a higher power? Is there something a little bit more expansive you want to go into as far as, that conscious contact with a higher power?
Yeah, sure. So I believe in meditation. In early recovery, I tried praying kind of like everyone else did, and I was trying to adapt their values and their way to connect with their higher power. And I had to step back and really realize that my higher power is different from other people's. And I think that's the same with a lot of us. So I have conversations with my higher power within my meditations. It's almost like an open prayer. It's kind of like a conversation. I try to listen for the message that my higher power is trying to give me during that meditation session. And I'll ask questions, and then I'll sit in silence and listen for the message. And usually I'll get it.
Absolutely. I ask all these questions in the beginning because we're going to go into your story. We're going to talk about the wreckage that, the disease wreaked in your lives. It's so important to know, that we have these amazing lives now. We have these amazing lives, and there's a lot of congruency within those lives. A lot of it is that, that conscious contact with a higher power, the relationship that we have with, our recovery community, what we're currently doing, and also our secular work, our secular lives, what we're doing. I'm a mother, I work full time, plus I have recovery, I have all these things that are going on. I still find time to create that balance in our lives. where there was none of that before. Absolutely nothing.
Oh, there was not.
No, so it's definitely good to hear. All right, so let's start, journaling your past a little bit. First, tell us how much clean time you have and when is your anniversary date?
So I got clean on May 13th of 2011. So I'm about 5.5 years clean at this point.
Fantastic. And how old were you the first time you drank or used drugs? And more importantly, how did they make you feel?
I was 18, and the first time that I drank for the first time, I got a little buzz and it made me feel less anxious. I was always an anxious kid, and I never was able to calm down my anxiety until the first time I took a drink.
Okay, I got you. And again, very reminiscent to so many of us, that feeling of comfort and ease that comes with that first drink.
I know.
All right, so you are all warmed up, Kayla. It's time for me to turn this show over to you. It's time for you to share your story, the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life when you hit rock bottom, and finally your journey into recovery up until today. So Kayla, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So as I said, I didn't take my first drink until I was 18. And reason being is I grew up in a home with addicts. And, my dad was and still is an active alcoholic, and my brother was a heroin addict. So growing up, my mom tried to shelter me from that. And instead of teaching me what these substances were doing to my family members, she just hid it from me and told me if I ever took a drink, I would become an alcoholic, or if I ever did drugs, I would become a junkie. And so when I moved out of my home, I didn't have that fear of, oh my goodness, my mother's going to be like, you're going to become an alcoholic. So I had the free reins to kind of take off. And even before then, all of my time and effort was spent on my academics and my sports and working out. And I was a very healthy person. I had straight A's. I graduated 4th in my class. So, I had a lot of things going for me. But when I went to college in Boston, it was a big culture shock. I didn't have my mom there to protect me from all of these evils in the world. And so I turned to booze. And very quickly, I discovered that I couldn't drink at night and wake up in the morning for my classes. So I introduced illicit substances into my diet. Mm-hmm. And I had it was an instant love affair. And I am 5.5 years sober now, but I only used for 5 years. But it was the progression of the disease was so quick for me that I was at my rock bottom at the end. I got kicked out of my dream college after it was a 5-year program. I got kicked out after 4 years. I lost all my jobs. I was homeless. I was couch surfing on my drug dealer's couch. I was making extremely, extremely dangerous decisions. And it was all because I was under the influence of drugs and alcohol, but I didn't see it that way. I was, I'm an addict, I'm selfish, and I'm perfect. So it was that my parents were going through a divorce, or that my brother was a heroin addict when I was younger. It was everyone else's fault. It wasn't mine. And, when I lived in Boston, I cut off contact with a lot of the good people I had contacts with before. And I got into contact with some really, not so good people, or they were good people making bad decisions, I should say. And I got stuck in that lifestyle, and it was more the lifestyle than it was, I liked getting high and I liked getting drunk, but towards the end, I wasn't getting high or drunk anymore. I was just sustaining. So I wasn't sick, or I wasn't, having seizures from alcohol withdrawal. So, at one point I tried going into recovery a month before I actually got into recovery, and I went to an outpatient program. And so I could go home at night, and they gave me drug tests in the morning. And for some reason, I just thought I could smoke a little pot and go, and they weren't going to catch me, And that's the craziness of this disease. Like, you think that you're above everyone, you hear about someone dying in a car accident because they were drunk, or someone overdosing. And immediately you think, well, that could never be me, and the realization is it could, and so, I did a lot of crazy things. And I don't like to really talk about the things I did in active addiction. Just know that I hurt a lot of people. I hurt myself. I did a lot of illegal things. And
Well,
I lost a lot.
we could go into a little bit of it. I mean,
All right. I guess I could go into a little bit of
yeah, I'm
it.
like, let's not gloss over too much here, okay?
Right. Well, I just finished a 5-part series on like 5 big things that I did in addiction that were crazy. And one of them was I would go on, 3 and 4 day binges, and I would shut off my cell phone or I would lose it. And no one would get a hold of me. I had, the cops called on me for missing persons reports at least 5 times, and I would make all these people just so crazy worried about me. And I didn't care. I didn't care about their worry. I didn't care that they were calling the cops and people were out looking for me. All I cared about was my next high. And I hurt a lot of people in the process. And, I had one of my friends bang down a door in the north end of Boston because he found out where the cab driver dropped me off. After 4 days of like keeping going back to this cab company, like, where did you bring her? Like, we can't find her. And he finally got it, and he shows up and drags me out of this place because I was on a 5-day binge, and that's really dangerous. And that was really when I look back at my active addiction, that was, as much as I hurt everyone around me, I was putting myself into dangerous situations. And I was putting myself in a situation where my family was going to have to find me in a really vulnerable state. And that's what I didn't want. And that's what really got me to open my eyes to be like, wow, I'm not just affecting myself, I'm affecting other people. There was one time that I went to a company outing and, I did drugs beforehand. I drank. It was like a booze cruise type thing. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning. So I immediately, like an hour into it, it was like a Tuesday too. It wasn't like a weekend. It was just a random Tuesday, this booze cruise, but I didn't know how to handle myself, So like an hour into it, I'm blackout drunk, and I come to in the back of a cab. And I'm like, oh my goodness, where am I? Like, how did I get in this cab? I was just on this boat, drinking, dancing, whatever. And I realized I had no money on me. I didn't have my purse. I had nothing on me. And we're in South Boston, and this cab driver stops at a stoplight, and I got out of the cab and I ran. And he's chasing me in his cab, and he's yelling at me, and I'm yelling to him. I had a boyfriend at the time. I always called them hostages because that's what we do. We take people hostage.
Absolutely.
So I'm yelling my boyfriend's number. I'm like, call him. He'll pay for my cab. And I just jumped into a bunch of bushes, and the cab driver took off.
Oh my God. It's fantastic. I'm starting to remember. I know I've done shit like that. Like, it's been so long that I've totally forgotten, but I know I've done the taxi cab shuffle.
Yeah, I didn't remember until I came to my amends, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So I went to I didn't know what cab company it was. So I figured if I paid some type of cab company my fare, that would, make me okay. So that's what I did, I felt so bad, and really, like, we can laugh at this, but in all honesty, the things that we do in active addiction is extremely dangerous to ourselves, to the ones around us. And, I would drunk drive. I would drive under the influence. And because I'm a girl and I'm pretty good at crying on command, I usually got out of the situations that probably would have put me in jail. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing. Maybe it would have gotten me to my bottom faster, but, I didn't have any consequences for a long time. I've never been arrested. The biggest consequence I think that suffered, other than my mental health and my health in general, is I got kicked out of school. And that was my dream college. So that was one. I lost my license. It wasn't because I was drinking and driving. It was because I had too many parking tickets in Boston. Instead of paying my parking tickets, I would spend my money on drugs and alcohol. So I lost my license. I lost my car. I lost my apartment. I was homeless. So, I skipped the whole jail thing. But I had a lot of consequences in my life. That's for sure.
You were homeless.
I got kicked out of my apartment and I couldn't get the money to go and like, even in like room shares, I just could never have enough money to get together. I always had a full-time job, but I was living in a city. Drugs are expensive, and really drugs are our first priority. And that was mine. And once I got kicked out of school, I didn't have my student loan to pay for my bills anymore. So I was on my own. So I was homeless. I was couch surfing for a while. I stayed at my friend's house, but I would make a fool of myself, or I would put them in bad situations, or I would steal from them and they would kick me out. And eventually I moved in with my drug dealer. I didn't pay him anything, but I moved in with him. I thought that was safer, and technically I guess I wasn't. I could have moved back to my parents' house, but it was 2 hours out of the city. I had a job in the city, or I had jobs in the city, I should say. I didn't have a steady job. And all my drugs were in the city. So I chose to be homeless instead of going back home where I couldn't get drugs, I couldn't get money, I didn't have a car.
Of course.
and that's what addicts do, I guess.
No, that's exactly what they do. So Is this your story in a nutshell?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
I did a lot of dumb stuff for a long time, for 5 years, and then I hit my rock bottom.
So tell us about that rock bottom, and go into as much detail as possible.
Yeah, sure. So 30 days before I hit my actual bottom, I went on one of those 2-week binges, and I came out of it, and I had done some really, I had cheated on my boyfriend at the time. I had called my mom in a blackout and started like really saying some awful things to her. I crashed my car. And so it really just all these things were coming to a head, and I couldn't excuse them away anymore. So my excuse was, well, I'm an alcoholic, so I'm going to go to rehab. This is going to fix everything. Like, you should feel bad for me. I'm an alcoholic. I never said I was a drug addict. I just said I was an alcoholic. So I went to that 30-day, or it wasn't even really 30 days. I think it was like 21 days, this outpatient program. But like I said, I was coming home and I was smoking pot at night. I think like 2 weeks into it, I started drinking again. And then by the third week, before I was supposed to graduate, which I never did, I started using drugs and just didn't show up anymore. But the seed was planted because a week later I was very depressed and I wanted to kill myself. I made a plan on May 12th that I was going to jump in front of the Acela train. I lived right across the street from the Acela train at the time. And I knew the schedule. It goes 120 miles an hour. And I knew that it would be like an instant thing. So I went into work that day. I picked up what I wanted to pick up. I wasn't going to jump in front of a train sober. I came home and I proceeded to do all my drugs and all the alcohol that I had. And I blacked out. I came to a couple minutes later and I was fighting with my boyfriend over a knife that I think I was trying to stab myself. I don't think I was trying to stab him, but like I said, I was in a blackout. I don't know. I blacked out again and I came to at the train station and I didn't jump, I thought about it and I didn't jump. So I told my boyfriend that I needed to go to the hospital. I told him, if you don't take me to the hospital, I'm gonna kill myself. That this is the end of it. I'm done.
Right.
And he said that he wouldn't take me to the hospital because I would be mad at him the next morning.
And it's so true.
Right, exactly. So he was like, you got to call your mom. And so I broke down. I called my mom and she brought me to Norwood Hospital. I was living in Norwood at the time. And that started, I went in and I told them I'm going to kill myself. And that's how I got help, but I didn't accept that I was an addict still. Even I was sitting in that crisis unit and my drug test came back, and I will never forget the look on my mother's face when they read off every single drug other than methamphetamines. And my blood alcohol level was 0.34. My mom's face was just, I want to cry thinking about it. I could not believe it. And I would not admit I was a drug addict. So they ended up admitting me into this psych ward. And when you go to the hospital, saying that you're going to kill yourself, they admit you for 72 hours for a psychiatric hold, whatever. So I figured 72 hours later, I'd be out of there. And that would be, I could tell people I had a mental breakdown. And that would be my excuse for my behaviors.
Right.
But they wouldn't let me out after 72 hours. They told me that my addiction was causing me to be a danger to myself and others. And unless I would commit myself to a dual diagnosis program that would treat my drug and alcohol addiction and my depression, that they weren't going to let me out of the hospital, and that I would have to go in front of a judge and try to fight for my freedom. And I was so mad at them. So I came out and I started talking to my roommate, who just so happened to be in recovery. And I'm complaining to her. I'm like, they're not going to let me out of this place. They're calling me a drug addict. And who do they think they are? And this gentleman, he looked like goddamn Santa Claus. And I was like, oh my goodness. So he speaks up and he's like, do you mind coming and sitting next to me? And his demeanor was just so calm. And he said something to me that will forever stick in my mind. And he said, are you the person that you want to be right now? In this moment, are you the person that you want to be? And I was like, I gotta go. So I got up and I cried. And the next day I woke up and I sat next to him and he started reading me stories from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I decided that day, after he read a couple stories and I identified with the people in the stories, I decided to sign my rights over to the psychiatric hospital to place me into a dual diagnosis program. And it was the best thing I ever did. I went from that psych hospital to a dual diagnosis program that was inpatient. And then I went to an outpatient program. And from the outpatient program, I went to meetings. And, it was an amazing journey up until I heard the word God in the halls.
Bring it.
I wanted to run away. I was like, hell no, I'm not going to come. And you know what it was? And I just wrote an article on this. So I was like, I'm not going to listen to these Bible thumpers. That was my perspective. That was my perspective at the time. And that was, and I can admit right now that was the wrong perspective to have. I was ignorant when I walked into the halls of Alcoholics Anonymous. That was the first program I went to. And I wanted to run out of there. But I kept going because I had nowhere else to go. No one else understood me. I knew I couldn't go back to drinking and drugs because I was going to jump in front of a train. So I just kept going to meetings. And finally, I got a sponsor because that's what they told me to do. And I asked my sponsor, I'm like, why do I need a higher power? And she's like, because you're not it. And I'm like, what the fuck kind of riddle is that? What are you talking about? She's like, you know what you should do right now? She's like, you need to use the group of drunks that are saving your ass as your higher power. Those group of drunks over there have more power than you do. And I still didn't understand it. I'm like, fine, I'll pray to the group of drunks, And I thought I really was trying to be passive aggressive. I'm like, you know what? I'll show you that praying to the group of drunks doesn't work. But joke was on me. It worked. You know what I mean? I finally got what she was saying. I finally got what a higher power actually meant. It had nothing to do with religion. It had nothing to do with God in the Bible. It had to do with a power that was greater than me that I could rely on to help me walk through this path of recovery, And so when I finally, that was my aha moment in recovery. It was like, oh my goodness, I am not the most important person on this earth. And there is a lot of things that are greater than myself that can guide me in this life. And so, that was probably 6 to 8 months into my recovery, but that changed my recovery for the better. I really started diving into my step work better because I had a better connection with a higher power. And so since I've done the steps 4 times, I did them twice in AA and twice in NA. I meditate. I try to do it at least once a day, if not twice. But that first 8 months, it was like I was white knuckling it because I believed in myself. I believed in my willpower to keep me fucking clean. And and I was struggling. I was struggling so bad because I didn't want to give that power up. And I finally did, and thankfully, I probably wouldn't be clean today if I did not come to that realization that there's something greater than myself. And I'm so grateful today for that.
Wow, that is see, that's what we were looking for here.
Yeah, I know my using, like, I don't, and honestly, my using, I don't remember a lot of it. And like, so now I can like look back and kind of see some things happening, but I don't have a lot of like great using stories because I was like literally just the bottom of a barrel, drunk and junkie from the get-go. I really didn't acquire anything to lose
Right.
other than myself.
Yeah, you were on a collision course.
I was, yeah. It was from the minute I picked it up, I was on a path of self-destruction, and it just continued, and it tornadoed with, bringing everyone into it. It was just awful.
No, there's that incomprehensible demoralization that you find yourself in right at the end, and getting clean and sober is impossible. You're at a point where you literally can't stop, but you haven't had fun in a long time.
Exactly.
It's just you slip in and out of a blackout and into a hangover, which you try and medicate with, and it's just this constant Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde chemistry experiment where you're just constantly trying to find that perfect mixture between reality and absolute oblivion. And when you finally get to a point where you can no longer do it anymore, then it's the logical next step is I got to kill myself.
Exactly.
I just need it to end.
Yeah, you're in so much emotional and physical and spiritual pain that the only way out of it is ending it, because the work to get out of that seems to be too much to handle. I ruined my career. I ruined my college education. I was in $100,000 of debt because I didn't finish college, Yeah, my only escape was to kill myself because I didn't want to face all of the things that I brought down with me.
Right. So then, you're putting your boyfriend at the time, the one that was going through this with you. Are you still with him, or was that?
No, I'm not. So, Like I said, that was a hostage situation. He was also, I can't say that he was an addict in my mind. He was, but he's not an addict until he says he is.
Right.
But yeah, that didn't work out. I tried to make it work out, but he had his own things going on, A lot of, like I said, the month before I had cheated on him. So a lot of that, the trust it wasn't going to build back up. And we tried, and it fizzled out. I was under the influence when I chose that boyfriend. So I wouldn't be someone I would have chose while I was clean.
Well, yeah. And it's another reason why I asked, because many times once you get clean, basically every single person in your life has to change, other than obviously your parents, your sisters, your blood relatives. Those are the ones that they stick around, but everybody else is almost like it's got to go, because the person that you were before, that's the person that attracted all those people, and the person you are today is going to attract different people. So then I'm assuming it's your husband, right? Yep.
So I am married now. I've been married for 3 years.
Okay. All right. Is your husband in recovery?
He is in recovery. We actually met in AA.
Okay. So you met your husband in recovery, and you guys got married after you were about 2 years clean?
Yep. I was about 2 years clean.
All right. And then you have how many kids?
I have 2 kids.
Wow. So
I'm busy.
Go back to the same statement. You move at, warp speed.
I really do. Like, I got all my using done in 5 years. I was done in 5 years. And, I just want to touch upon, you were saying that, like, we have to get rid of all these people. So, I was in the psych ward for almost 20 days. I think I was there for like 19 days. And then I was in that inpatient program for another 2 weeks, and then that outpatient program. So I didn't have my cell phone for a long time. When I finally turned it back on, I had one voicemail. It was from my drug dealer. I owed him money. Not anyone else. And that's the honest to God truth. No one wondered where I was for like almost 45 days.
Oh man, that
It's,
is, everyone that's listening to this goes, "Yep, I get it.
exactly.
I totally get it." No, yeah.
It sounds really, I'm sure people that aren't, haven't gone through active addiction might listen to this and be like, my God, this girl's a hot mess. But you know what? Like anyone that has gone through it can relate and laugh at it, because what am I going to do? Like beat myself up over it? No, that's the reality of what it was.
No, but also the reality of it is that as addicts, we're very intense people. So we live an intense life, whether it's in addiction or it's in sobriety, it's intense, right? And so, once we get clean, especially once you start to really grasp onto the steps.
Yeah.
The steps you start grasping onto the steps, and they just start to perform miracles in your life. As you start to develop coping skills, as you start to embrace a different way of life, values, principles, you start to love yourself, you develop self-esteem, self-worth, all these things start to happen. And so the universe just starts to present opportunities in front of you. It's just like, it does, it happens fast. But all these things, if you allow yourself to walk away from your past, then all the new stuff is what's waiting for you in recovery.
Exactly.
I would say that if more people could let go, right? There's that step 2, step 3,
Yep.
Where you just have to let go of the past. So many of us walk in and it's like, I want to get my marriage back. I want to get my girlfriend back. I want to get my job back. I want to get all this stuff back, instead of, I'm going to have to let go of a lot of stuff and then let God work in my life and present me with things, because what he presents me with is so much more amazing than anything I can come up with. Even though in the beginning we're so hesitant to the whole idea of God. Why are we talking about God in here? I'm just trying to stop doing cocaine.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just trying to change my life.
I always had those like foxhole prayers though when I was using, like, please God, like let me just go to sleep. I've been up for 5 days, just please, and I'll never use again. And then lo and behold, 5 hours later I'm using.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, I really had to like shed my old skin. I don't really have much from my old past in my present.
If you do, you're holding on to these things, you work a thorough 4-step, in order to shed yourself of all that baggage. You're holding on to so much. And, the 4th step is what helps you do that inventory, right? So you've got to do this very fearless and moral inventory. There's a lot of terminology in there that people aren't going to like initially. That's why you work it with a sponsor so they can explain it to you. But, once you shed all that, you get rid of all the old baggage, then you can start a whole new life fresh, no matter all the craziness we were doing, no matter if we wanted to kill ourselves at some point, because so many of us have. We've, at some point just like, this is too much. This is too much. So let's just end this thing. But for those of us that get past that and find our way ultimately to God, we get a life beyond our wildest dreams.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like I'm super busy, and like when I first came into the program, I didn't stay busy. I sat in my own shit and I wallowed and I thought about the past and everything that I did wrong, and like all the things I was missing out on, because I got clean at 23. I was only legal to drink for 2 years. So it was a big thing for me to be like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to drink again. And I'm 23 years old. So I had to really, before I could even open up to the idea of doing steps or anything, I had to get a grasp on the fact that I needed to change everything in my life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now, 5 years in, married, kids, you've got these projects. You've got Sober Mommy, and you've got some things in the future. What are the projects you're working on right now, and what do you see big picture, for your future here in recovery?
So my big future goal is to help decrease the number of accidental overdoses, the heroin epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's right now the number is only increasing. So what I'm trying to do is work with families and the communities to really destigmatize addiction and get them to know what addiction is all about. So my most recent project that I'm doing is I am doing a 30-minute TV show once a month on my public access channel. And it's called Ending the Stigma. It's kind of like a talk show. I'll have different professionals from the addiction field. So be it psychologists or maybe like police officers. I have a guy from the ambulance corps that wants to be on there. And like I'll live stream it on Facebook and people can ask questions for these professionals. And I'll be talking back and forth with these professionals about what they see, what they think can end this epidemic. And it's really just trying to get the information out there, because anyone that a lot of families don't want to admit that their child's a drug addict because of the stigma. And then, God forbid, if their child dies, they can't openly mourn the reason why their child had passed away because of the stigma, and you see these pictures online of these mothers overdose with their kids in the back seat. These people are never going to lead a normal life again because of the stigma of addiction. So my goal is to end that stigma and start a conversation of how to fix it. I'm also working, I do marketing. So I'm working with another addict and promoting a book and trying to do the funding for a documentary on the heroin epidemic. So I have a lot in the works. I also write, I contribute monthly, sometimes bi-monthly to addictionblog.org. And then I have other blogs that come and ask me to write articles for them. So I do that when I'm asked to.
Yeah, you got big goals,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not just trying to like help a couple addicts. Like my goal is to really put a dent in this issue.
I'm curious about, the public access. So how does that work? How do you even start with that?
So I actually approached the public access channel because what I wanted to do was a 1-hour open forum in like the school's gymnasium or some type of, nice hall, and people from the surrounding communities, because I actually live next to a couple cities that are hit pretty bad with the epidemic. So I wanted to do this open forum where I would have, a psychologist, a police officer, the ambulance, the people that are dealing with the addicts, the active addicts on an everyday basis, and trying to not really normalize, but humanize these addicts.
Mm-hmm.
And have families come in and, I would have Narcan, I would have information on rehabs, I would information on Al-Anon and Nar-Anon and, all of that. So anyway, I approached these people. It was like, hey, I have an idea for this. And, it just so happened to be a progressively thinking producer for the show or for the TV channel. And he was like, I have a better idea. Why don't we do a 30-minute talk show or a 30-minute show? You can do whatever you want for 6 months and really get some hype about this and really, get some listeners. And so we're not going to have a forum with maybe 20 parents there. We can have a forum with hundreds of people and really reach out to these people. So that's how that started. I just expected to do a 1-hour something that would be broadcasted for people to really learn about drugs and alcohol and what it can do. And it just kind of snowballed into, hey, why don't you do a 30-minute show?
And so if our listeners wanted to check out that 30-minute show, how would they find it?
So they can go to my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Kayla Greenhalge Addiction. I have not started the Facebook page for the show yet because I don't have the right name down yet. But they can follow that for any updates. And then they can also ask me questions, and they can ask for if they want like a specialist on drug replacement therapy, or if they want to, someone that has 25 plus years in recovery, like I'm willing to listen to my readers and my followers on what they want to do. This isn't for me to sit on a TV show and talk to people. This is to answer everyone else's questions that they might not be able to ask, or maybe they're too ashamed to ask.
Okay, so you're going to post this on your Facebook page.
Correct.
Okay, so whenever it's about to be broadcast, or it's going to be a live.
Yeah, so I'll Facebook Live it, and then I'll also once it's edited and it's already been broadcasted, I'll put a link to the final 30-minute piece.
Well, you can also put it on the Facebook private group too, so that
I will.
makes it easier for them to find it. Because sometimes,
Yeah,
they're already there. So feel free to drop so many of the listeners and the guests, they have a lot of recovery material that that they participate in. Either it's blogging or it's other podcasts or whatever the case may be, and they post our videos and they post those on the Facebook page. So yeah, it'd be great for you to post that on there. And you mentioned one more thing. There was another media that you were using similar.
Oh yeah, so so I'm working with another recovering addict, and I do marketing on the side. So I'm actually marketing his book, which is going to be coming out in February. It's his memoirs. It's called I Am a Heroin Addict. And so I'm working with him to get his story out there to help other addicts. And we're also working on trying to do a documentary.
Ah, that's what it was, a documentary. Yeah. So that's in the works. That's another big picture item. That's in the works.
Yeah, that's a big picture item.
Got it. Okay, excellent. All right, so there's a lot going on over here, keeping you very busy. And again, like we were talking in the beginning of the, before we started recording, idle time is the devil's workshop. So
it really is.
If you're not busy doing something productive, then you're going to be busy doing something, that
could be destructive.
That could be destructive, right, to you and to those around you. And it's another reason why I do the podcast, is to continue to, like you, bring us together. There's so many of us around the globe that are suffering from this. And I can't tell you how many people still struggle with reaching out to some sort of a recovery program, whether it's AA or NA or Smart Recovery or anything else. Just taking that first step towards admitting that they have a problem to another human being, and then being in a room that is about recovery. They have that tough time just getting in there.
Yeah.
And being around people that are in recovery, and why are these people so happy? And
I was sure that everyone in recovery was doing something on the side. They could not be happy not drinking ever again. I was certain of it.
Yes. No, what's funny is there's so many of us that are like, when am I going to have enough clean time to get included in the private club? Because there's got to be that once you get enough time and you're in with the right people, then you get to be part of the special, we're using something. But you have to learn how to use it first. It's so fucked up.
Oh, I know, right? Our minds are, and that's what it is, and that's why, I write, and I write a lot about recovery, and the things I write about my active addiction, I try to have like a funny spin on it, because we are so hard on ourselves about what we did or how we're doing in recovery or where our thoughts are going, especially when you start doing the steps, you're thinking, you're very aware of what you're thinking. So you begin to, at least for me, I would begin to criticize what I was thinking. I'm not even saying it out loud, and I'm criticizing myself, and that's an active addict trait. And I had to relearn not to do that.
And it's so wonderful, even this conversation we're having right now, that, there's going to be a few thousand people that hear this, and they're going to be going, yes, I totally get it, right? Like, I have these thoughts that are self-sabotaging, that are constantly trying to justify and rationalize all these crazy things in my life, right? And making sense of things and manipulating myself, talking to myself in my own voice. Only another addict would
is going to get that, right? I know.
We call it the itty bitty shitty committee, right?
There's something that my sponsor always says: I apologize for everything, and a lot of addicts do. And you know what she said? She said, you would apologize if someone stepped on your foot. And every time I apologize to her for something, she tells me, get off my damn foot, because that's what I should be saying. Instead of apologizing for that person stepping on my foot, I should be like, get the fuck off my foot, buddy.
Absolutely. But we learn how to do that.
We do. it does, it takes time. And for anyone that's listening, that's struggling and, is wondering when they're going to get to a place that they feel happy and they feel good about themselves, just hold on until, don't leave until the miracle happens. That's what we say, right?
That's absolutely what we say. Don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle happens. I love it. All right, Kayla. Well, let's start closing up here. All right.
Sounds good.
And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your early recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to respond with inspiring and insightful answers you can share with our newcomers. Are you ready?
Sounds good.
All right, let's do this. So what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
I didn't think I was an addict. I knew that alcohol was a problem, even though I was using more drugs than I was alcohol. But I really thought that I had a mental health issue, not an addiction issue. And really, I did have a mental health issue, but I didn't see it as one and the same. I saw them as separate. And so I would admit that I had a mental health issue, but I wouldn't admit that I had an addiction issue. And that kept me sick for a long time.
Excellent. That totally makes sense. So 2, at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
I think it was probably my second or third meeting. And I went with a friend of my father. So like I said, my father was an active alcoholic and he still is. And so his way of supporting me in my recovery was sending me with his other alcoholic friends that went to AA. So I went to this meeting and you know who I saw? I saw that guy that I was in the psych ward with that was preaching to me from the AA Big Book. And I was like, this is where I am supposed to be. You know what I mean? And I went and I hugged him and he was so glad that I was there. I didn't even know where he was from. I just happened to show up at the same meeting as him. And I realized that I was in the right place and that this is the place where I was going to find my healing.
That is a beautiful story. I love those. Those are amazing aha moments, because
it really was.
Later on, it's funny because I've had those, and at the time I wouldn't consider it a God shot. But I know years later, looking back, I'm going, wow, God was just so right there all over me, when I first came in. I
think back to that man all the time because I really think that he was my higher power. He was sent by my higher power to intervene in my life. And if he hadn't have, I wish I could remember the meeting I went to, but I was in early recovery. You don't remember much, but I think about him all the time. So if you're listening, if you know who I am, please reach out to me.
That is awesome. I love it. This is so great. You can find out all her information will be on the show notes.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to a newcomer that you read in early recovery?
Well, I jumped right into the Big Book, like I said, but if it had to be a book that wasn't, you know what I did? I read Adult Children of Alcoholics, and I identified with that book because I am an adult child of an alcoholic. And that actually, there's a section in there that's adult children of alcoholics that are also either alcoholics or drug addicts. And really anyone that, if you come from an addictive home or an alcoholic home and you're wondering where these traits came from, read that book. It's amazing. And it's like it was written about your life. And that was it. That really brought me closer to the program and closer to my recovery, because I understood a lot of what was going on.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love it. And 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Fake it till you make it. So I got my sponsor not too long after I got into the program, and I was actually going to active meetings, and then, you get 3 months and you can finally speak from the podium. And I thought that I was, everyone would always speak about this spiritual, guidance that they had on their walk of recovery. And I was like, I don't have that. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't speak like that. So my sponsor said, okay, use these group of drunks and fake it till you make it, talk to them. I act as if they could save your life. And that's what I did. And I faked it until I finally had that other aha moment of, oh my goodness, there is a power greater than myself. And then I could not fake it anymore. I actually did have my own higher power. That wasn't something that my sponsor told me to use, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful suggestion. And then finally, number 5, if you could give our newcomers only one suggestion, what would that be?
90 meetings in 90 days. So people in the halls will get to, try to get to at least one meeting a week that's the same meeting. So if you don't show up to those meetings, those people are going to be like, where is this person? You need to get your face out there. You need to, if you get to a meeting and you don't like it, go find another meeting. You're not always going to like every single meeting that you go to, but I promise if you listen and you actually listen with an open mind, you'll hear something.
90 meetings in 90 days. And if you're not completely satisfied, we will gladly refund your misery.
We will.
So, Kayla, what is the best way for our listeners to reach out to you and find you?
So they can either go to sobermommyblog.com or they can reach me on Facebook at facebook.com/Kayla Greenhalge Addiction. I answer pretty quickly because most of my work is on social media.
Beautiful. Wonderful. All right. This has been an amazing interview. Thank you so much for joining us, Kayla.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
You have such a great story. More importantly, your bottom story is so much that I can relate to, and I know that our listeners will be able to relate to. So I'm glad I was able to get that out of you.
I know. Like I said, I don't remember a lot of it. So it's hard for me sometimes, especially like it's not even like I'm on the spot, but like it's hard for me to piece it together sometimes when I'm like, because most of my writing and most of my work is in the solution, So I like blocked out what caused it in the first place, other than I did a lot of drugs and alcohol and made a lot of bad choices.
No. What we have here is beautiful. Your recovery journey is magnificent, and
Thank you.
what you're doing right now is so important. So that's what matters right now. What you're doing with what happened.
Right. Exactly.
And that's how it is now is what's important.
Right. I'm still here, and if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, folks, we have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the SHAIR Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.theshairpodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12-Step